Seconds. 5.
Oh. Happy Friday, everyone. Good morning. Good morning. Walter didn't realize that I pressed the go live, so this is the reason his face was like that. But yeah,
all good.
All good. So it's the 9th episode of HeleCloud Talks Cloud, and we have two guests, one from AWS and one from Humio. Do you want to say something about yourselves, Sohan?
Sure, I'll go first. Hi, my name is Sohan. I'm a dev advocate with AWS in the Benelux region. I typically focus on a lot of the emerging technologies, and I got my first haircut in a salon since the pandemic. So this is the result, which isn't the best, but
yeah. Hello, everybody. My name is James. I'm part of the solution architecture team at Humio, just based just outside of London. And I have not had to worry about haircuts for the last year, so I'm okay. Thank you.
Come on, Walter. You're not being very supportive. Okay.
Sorry.
Well, we made fun of Walter's bad hair just a minute ago, so this is why
I'm still on COVID hair excuse, so it's fine.
Okay.
It's fine.
So, which topic are we going to start with first? Let's start with fire.
Yes. You know, I think the funniest tweet. So obviously, so we're talking about the fire in OVH's data center in Strasbourg. Really serious stuff. The worst you can imagine. And then the funniest tweet I saw about it, because obviously it's also super good meme material. The funniest tweet I saw about it was so who talked about killing Kubernetes with fire, and well. This is the one.
It's amazing how the reason for the fire is still unknown. Because I was digging last night and I'm like, who started it? Who started it? Where's the finger pointing in the story? And there's no finger pointing. No one knows when the fire started. This intern lit a cigarette next to the server, and this is how the fire started.
I must say though, first of all, I think it's unfortunate for OVH. I'm glad no one was injured. Even the firefighters are safe. No one was hurt. It seems like they've handled it really well, though. So if you see the CEO, his name is Octave. He's been tweeting like updates. They promised to get everything up and running by Monday, which is amazing, given that your entire data center is burnt down. He's giving frequent updates. Yeah, not everything, of course, but a lot of it, right? And he's even put out videos saying this is the extent of damage, this is what's happening. So they've handled it well. I mean, from the outside at least, right? And I think a lot of companies, things like this happen to a lot of companies, and I think there's some takeaway.
It's very profiling. It says a lot about a company when the way you handle this kind of thing, because obviously it's a devastating thing to happen, and especially for OVH, probably they will be okay. But I think a lot of smaller companies who just happen to be hosted in that DC are facing potentially existential threats from a fire like that. So it's quite serious. Yeah, it's Go ahead.
No, I was saying I was watching the video, his video update. Poor guy. I don't think he slept in the past week. Like you can tell, he's clearly stressed. But the fact that they're doing that as a company, I think they're reacting quite well to it.
Yeah, I think we were talking about it yesterday also with James in the screening call and or the how to say it, the briefing call, and I think one of the things is that it brought me back to a time where we were hosting in a data center like that, and it really made me realize how many things I haven't thought about in a long time, that stuff that you needed to be concerned about, like exactly this happening. I mean, in AWS and in cloud in general, we take so much stuff for granted that it's not even funny. Like, I don't ever think about networking or where my hard drives are located or any of that stuff. So that's it's quite interesting to sometimes you don't realize how much progress you've made or how much the world has changed until you take a moment to stop and think about it, and it's quite interesting.
Yeah, definitely. It reminded me of a story from more than 15 years ago now. I'm getting old. A major financial institution in London that had its data center in the basement, which seemed like a very, very good idea, right up until the day the basement flooded all the way to ground level. So these things come out of nowhere sometimes, but the stuff you don't have to think about as well. Humio's seen this in some of our operations where we've been in infrastructure provisioning rather than cloud providers, should we say. And we've been debugging failing nodes, and it turns out that it's physical cooling infrastructure that's actually failing around the hardware. We've had to sort of debug that from the inside out. And modern cloud, you just don't have to think about those sorts of things.
And that's really it, right? So I have this in a completely different context with my child. He's 6 years old and he's learning how to do calculus. I'm like, he will very quickly turn to use calculators, and then not really spend much time doing calculations in his head. And there is no reason, because it allows him to actually spend his brain power on other things than calculating how much 374 divided by 3 is. And for me, that's it's quite good to realize that this kind of abstraction levels allow us to focus on the things that matter. And ultimately, I guess especially for companies like Humio and for us as well, we want to be thinking about the business value and not necessarily is the cable plugged into this to the server correctly.
It's funny because just this week I was reviewing HeleCloud's business continuity and disaster recovery plan as part of the ISO 27001 recertification that we go through every year. And a lot of the things that we depend upon are cloud-based, and backups. Of course, you can restore data lost from a SharePoint or from Atlassian or from AWS. This is just a given. We have nothing physical other than a few phones and laptops, but everything is on the cloud. So it's if you're a company that has physical infrastructure, would you really test once a year your disaster recovery plan? This is the disaster, a fire in the data center, and this is how we're switching to that. Or do you just do what everyone else does and put in the date of the last test without ever having completed it?
I think one of the nicest talks I've ever seen was a session by Steve Trogot in a config management camp. And he has been in infrastructure space for a very long time, and so he was working at is it the New York Stock Exchange when it got hit by an actual bomb in the early 90s, and those were the first times that people were starting to think about disaster recovery plans, because before that computing just hadn't reached a scale where this was a thing that you were thinking about. And it really hit me when he showed a picture of a building with half its side blown out. And he was like, yeah, when this happened, we started to think about, hey, maybe we should, have some kind of a contingency plan for when these major events occur. It's quite.
But we all had a disaster recovery plan played through this in 2020 because of the pandemic, because half of the things were your network equipment in the office fails. What do? You start teleworking, or the office becomes unavailable for whatever reason, you start teleworking. And in all of those places I was like, yeah, we've been teleworking for over a year now. Everything's fine. We're testing that every day. It's cool.
Yeah. But yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, you really see this in sort of the maturity of organizations as well. I see a lot of smaller, younger companies where you walk in and you start talking about things like, recovery time objectives, recovery point objectives, and people just look at you like you're mad. Why would we even consider those things? And they're the ones that really risk suffering, I think, in these situations. So some of that fuddy-duddy, old school IT process and configuration management and stuff it still definitely has some value.
Yeah, I think that's really it, right? So we find new fancy words to do the same thing, but really a lot of the core principles are really the same as they've been for the last, I don't know, 40, 50 years by now. And that's fine. Moving on, we have a story about
moving on.
About moving on.
We have one story about 15 ways to leave your cloud provider. It was a really funny InfoWorld news article about something that I had never thought about, because I'm super naive and I feel like the world is my oyster. I never feel like the terms and conditions could ever come back to haunt me. But the point of the article is that your cloud provider may be out to get you. And there are terms and conditions written in a way that could easily make your account suspendable or terminatable, and you just have to be prepared for that moment. So a different type of disaster.
Yeah, I mean, I put this in a broader context. I think that having been around for 20 years, I'm also getting old. We've seen a number of evolutions in computing, and it is a given that there will be a next evolution. And this might not be tomorrow or next year or in 5 years or in 10 years, but there will be a next evolution. And I think some of the biggest challenges, at least in enterprise IT, are around how on earth do I take care of that application that somebody started using 15 years ago that wasn't at all meant for even virtualization, let alone running in the cloud. Those are the ones that cause the most headache. And this is going to be, we like to think that we're at the tip of innovation, but in 10 years from now, we'll look back to the stuff that we're doing now and go like, oh my God, back then we had to worry about all of these things.
Yeah, you're right, Walter, in the sense, I think people don't realize how much of the code in the world is still very much legacy code. Like almost all the core banking code is still COBOL, right? And billions of dollars worldwide rely on that. And it's for a reason. And there are some technical reasons why COBOL's probably better than, writing it in JavaScript or something like that. But also the fact that it's just been there for so long. And like you said, moving from that and to modernize all of it overnight is very hard.
Yeah, there's a statistic we used to talk about all the time, which is, I can't remember it exactly, but in a mature business where you have software development, I think only 2% or 5% of your software engineers are actually working on new product. The rest of the teams are all just maintaining infrastructure you've already got running. And I've done a lot of work in aerospace and semiconductors and things like that. And some of the things you find, I had one organization that couldn't shut down a data center because there were 3 applications left running in it, and they daren't turn the server off because they weren't sure that they could turn it back on again. It's just this one little box stuck in the corner that someone had to deal with.
I think this is the funniest part, right? Where I started my career as a programmer, so I wrote code for a company in 2004, 2005. That by then I was thinking, okay, if this runs for a couple of years in production, we're all good. And then I found out last year that it's still running and still being used. Like, I did not design that stuff with 15 years of lifetime in mind. And I think that very often we don't think about it because especially for us as a consulting company, we are very often building new environments. And we also do managed services, of course, but especially where we build stuff, we cannot foresee how long this will actually be end up being used. And, it's what I've found is that in general, and this in development, it's even worse than in infrastructure, because in infrastructure you're usually okay making changes relatively easily, but especially in development, cutting corners in software design is a great way to build up an unsurmountable amount of technical debt that will just grind you to a halt over time. And this is it's a huge problem because usually software engineers work under a lot of pressure to deliver. And this story of, hey, this feature is going to need to take 6 weeks of development instead of the 1 week in which it could theoretically be finished is a tough story. So I've learned to just say this feature is going to take 6 weeks and not I can have it done in 1 week, but I really need 6 weeks, because then you're how to say that, you're corroding your own value.
Yeah, infrastructure as code can be a spaghetti monster as well. So it's not just a software issue. It can be something that is so entangled that you need like 70 pull requests to change, to add a new tag. And we were just discussing this week that we were looking at the amount of efforts we spend on maintaining infrastructure, and billable versus non-billable work, and customer-initiated work versus things we do proactively. And the biggest piece of work was actually maintaining code and taking care of that technical debt that accumulates mere weeks after the infrastructure has been written.
Yeah, that really is the biggest hurdle, the overtime thing. We have one of the engineers in our team is really an incredible performer, and it's funny because it's his first IT job, so he's only been in IT for like a year and a half, and I regularly have discussions with him where I say, the work that you're doing is really amazing. It's on par with senior engineers levels of work. But he has one thing that he cannot make up for the life of him, is that he hasn't been spending a number of years in this position. So those kind of things you cannot expect from a junior person to have seen how things behave over time and how things change over time, and that's something that no amount of geniusness can compensate for. Just time experience. Yeah.
Andy Jassy says that, right? He says there's no compression algorithm for experience, which I think just encapsulates what you're talking about.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's definitely a thing. I think we strayed a lot from where we were talking about, but I guess that's okay. The next topic is there was a Microsoft Exchange flaw, actually 4 flaws uncovered a few weeks ago, and these were of the most vulnerable nature, and it turns out that lots and lots of organizations immediately got attacked for it, and actually got hacked. And for these 30,000 that the article mentions, I am 100% sure there's probably at least 1 million more worldwide that no one has uncovered. So it's quite serious.
But then again, it says the exploit was only present on self-hosted servers running Exchange Server 2013, 16, and 19. So anyone running Exchange online would have been safe. Yeah,
but I think that unfortunately, the organizations that are still running their own stuff is the SMB segment, where they've had someone install an Exchange server at some point, and then they don't really have IT staff, or they have very little IT staff, and they haven't made that jump yet. And for those kind of organizations, they are the ones that won't even find out that they're hacked. Like, nobody's looking at this stuff.
From my point of view, unless you have an extraordinarily good reason, nobody should be running their own email server in this day and age. It has to be a very, very, very good reason. There's some of the things that you can't argue with. Completely air-gapped networks where the file, the email is essentially internal and there is no breakout to the internet. I mean, that's very, very rare. I saw it a lot more in the semiconductor world, where you have this sort of very, very high security networks and large groups of people collaborating without connectivity. That's maybe a decent reason to do it. this has been in the news, and it's happened officially now. So Humio has been acquired by CrowdStrike, and various infrastructure is operated within that environment that's not external. But unless you're one of these like 0.5% use cases, just don't run your own email server. Just don't do it.
Absolutely.
My second, go on, Walter.
No, you go ahead. I talked too much.
My second IT job was doing email security, a product that was scanning emails for viruses, for social security numbers and things like that. And most of our customers were running Exchange servers. And I think 95% of the customers were American. No one understood the Exchange server that they were assigned to maintain. We were constantly dragged through trying to configure the Exchange server to work with our mail server, that was mail relay server, and they wouldn't call Microsoft. So if my experience is representative of the situation, I think a lot of the people that are assigned to maintain an Exchange server just don't have the capabilities to do that. And what's funny is if organizations are using Exchange Online, that requires even less expertise. So it should be a no-brainer that you shouldn't maintain the physical machine.
Yeah. It's the damn spammers that made all of email security so difficult, because the spam anti-spam algorithms became quite complicated, and I have nightmares maintaining mail servers that you had to worry about the algorithms that would detect spam. And it's theoretically possible, but for the last, I don't know, at least a decade, if somebody asks, can you also host email? I say, if you really want to, it is theoretically possible, but you really shouldn't do that yourself.
Yeah, I remember we had a feature called intention-based filtering that was promising. That was like 10 years ago. That was promising to use AI/ML to catch spam. It was the least effective one. It was mostly based on IPs and keywords and just reporting messages as spam so that new ones don't make it.
Yeah, for most of the last decade, I've used Google Apps and really never really thought about spam. And there were very few false positives. Once a month, I would go through my spam box and see what was up. But quite happy to not have to think about that. Yes. So the last one is a little bit more political. So we'll not focus on the political side of this story. Really.
It's about Jedi's and Star Wars.
Yeah, I was going to post a link to the article, but I visited it yesterday, and the Washington Post is horrible. So
let me do that then. Do you want me to post it?
No, I got it. Oh, no, it posted the link to the Trello board. Sorry. But anyway, it's about the Jedi contract in the US. It's a US government big thing. Obviously, Sohan prefers to not talk about it because it directly impacts Amazon. There's lots of
Jedis and since we talk about Jedis and politically correct, I must say the Empire did nothing wrong. There's my political statement.
This is true. I actually totally, since we're going off topic anyway, I just rewatched Star Wars with my housemate, and when you watch it, it's I didn't really realize because the last time I watched Star Wars, I don't know, over a decade ago or so, I didn't really realize how this Darth Vader character wasn't actually necessarily coming into the dark side from a bad perspective. It just kind of slid out of control once he got there. But
there
really
was
what he wanted.
there was a quote from Lincoln, I think it was, that if you want to see what a person's like, don't give them, don't put them in miserable conditions, because everyone just starts begging for mercy, but give them power instead, because this is where you see people getting really corrupt.
Interesting, yeah. I guess it's true. But yeah, so it's a big thing, and so there basically to stay factual, there's several years ago, the U.S. government made a $10 billion contract to outsource all of their cloud operations to a single cloud operations provider, and that led to quite a bit of back and forth to who should get this contract. The more interesting aspect actually is that what you see now happening is that there are some of the organization, because it's held up in court at the moment, and what you see now is that certain organizations that were supposed to be part of this contract are actually going forward by themselves, because they cannot afford to just be held up by lots and lots of litigation. And for me, it's quite interesting to see how what we talked about yesterday is the centralization and decentralization, where this was an effort to centralize everything. And I think this is a prime example of how centralization has a giant risk of, this kind of single point of failure, basically. Now the whole entire thing is a single point of failure. So you see decentralization happen, and basically what I've watched over my career is that you see when something's centralized, people are like, oh no, this is too centralized, we have single points of failure, we need to decentralize, and it gets decentralized, and then people are like, oh no, this is too much hassle and effort and interconnectivity, blah, 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 yada, yada, let's centralize parts of it. And there doesn't appear to be a final answer to this situation.
Yeah, I mean, I obviously have no opinion on what decision the US government should make here, but talking about the centralized and decentralized approach, I suppose I've always looked at this from a DevOps toolchain point of view. That's really been my frame of reference for these sorts of discussions. But what I found works best is, I err more towards the centralized approach, but you've got to have the flexibility to embrace new technologies as they come up. It seems like a bit of a bizarre decision that you would, choose a single vendor to go with for this sort of technology and commit to that for a long period of time, because there's going to be innovation that vendor doesn't incorporate. You want the flexibility to be able to make choices. The other thing, I've seen, the thing that I've seen works best to sort of get that centralized view, but without frustrating your customers, your users, whoever they are. Give people the ability to really do what they think they need to do, and just monitor it and have that oversight.
Yeah.
Potentially, you could call it the illusion of choice. Users, but
well,
maybe a bit unfair.
Trust but verify, right? So I'm a particular fan of the Cloud Center of Excellence kind of setup that is advocated for really large organizations that have really thousands of engineers. So one of our customers has like 5,000 engineers or whatever. So they have a Cloud Center of Excellence, and that center doesn't go and operate any environments except for what they need for them internally. But the service organization that CCOE is part of, its sole purpose is to provide service to the rest of the business. And they do that by saying, hey, here's cloud. These are the things we can provide you. We provide you with nicely set up accounts that are following organizational best practices. But once we set it up, here's your account, and by all means, do what you think you need to be doing. We are monitoring some organization-wide requirements, like how to say that. Things that are regulatory compliance stuff, but outside of that, please go ahead and self-service so you can do the things that you need to be doing, because you're a business unit, you're a product that needs to do certain things, and you know best. And that kind of balance seems to be working quite well. It's obviously not devoid of problems, but at least it provides the flexibility that you also talk about, James.
Okay, and our time is up.
What?
Yeah, I know. So let's give Sohan and James a couple of minutes to self-promote or promote ideas that are important to you. James, you can go first this time because we let Sohan first.
Okay. Yeah. So as I said, hi, I'm James from Humio. So just 30 seconds on what we've been doing. Humio is a relatively young company that's really gone into that sort of log aggregation, centralization of audit data, whatever you want to do. We have really good relationships with companies like HeleCloud. We obviously have built really good relationships with AWS and other cloud providers. What we're really trying to do is just take that sort of evolutionary step on machine data analytics, log management, that side of things. We've got a fundamentally new approach to handling that sort of data, and we've got customers, monitoring and having oversight of hundreds of terabytes a day of machine data. So that's really what we're trying to do. And as I mentioned earlier, we've actually recently been acquired by CrowdStrike, so this is potentially the last outing of the Humio branding.
Show the owl. Show the
owl.
owl.
Well, we have the owl. This is the Humio owl.
Nice.
So it was nice knowing him. He was a cool owl.
He's just been eaten by a larger bird.
Well, it's slightly awkward because there are examples in nature of owls eating falcons, but not falcons eating owls. But we'll see how that goes.
Nice.
Okay, Sohan.
Yeah, well, AWS has a ton of things going on. We are actually hosting Dev Day for security next week. I'm actually just going to post the link here real quick. As we say in AWS, security is job zero, and we've been talking about how security can cause things to go wrong, or lack of security can cause things to go wrong. Also, if you're in Belgium, Netherlands, or Luxembourg, we're hosting a game day on the 22nd of April. So go over to your meetup group and check it out. A game day is a lot of fun. You get to, if you haven't played one before, it's a 2-hour thing where you have an AWS account and things are breaking, and it's up to you and your team to fix things and get your workload up and running. A lot of fun, good way to learn stuff, good way to meet people in the community. So do join us for that as well.
It's virtual, I suppose?
Yes, it is virtual. It's all virtual.
So is it possible for people outside of the Benelux region to join, theoretically?
Sure. Why not? Yeah, why not?
I did one of these game days, and it's really a lot of fun because you get to move fast and break things in an environment that you don't actually care about because it won't exist past the game day. So learned a lot of things where you're like, I wonder what this button does, and then you can actually try it out and see what happens. It was fun, and we won, of course. As a best team out there. Okay, thanks everyone. Thanks Sohan, James. Thanks Lena, and we'll be back next week.
Bye. Have a good
Cheers.
Friday and a good weekend.
Bye.